Okay, so you got your garden in. Let's talk about how to keep it healthy and thriving and how to get some good harvests out of it. One of the most important things is to cover your soil. These are just some oak leaves from the fall. We have some pine needles as well. It really doesn't matter what you use, but there are so many benefits to covering your soil. It keeps it moist down here, it keeps it healthy, it helps keep the microbes alive, it breaks down and feeds the soil. And this is just a couple inches deep here. I do want to say, if you're going to plant a plant in here, you still want to plant it in the soil. You don't want to plant it in the mulch. So you'd want to pull this aside and then dig your hole and plant your plant. You could really use anything for mulch. Just as long as you keep your soil covered. Some people even use like landscape fabric and they'll burn holes in it and put plants in there. That's really beneficial as well. You just won't get the benefits of it breaking down and feeding the soil, but it will cover your soil, which is important. If you need to trim a tree, put those leaves or those branches in your soil. Just make sure it's small enough particles that the rain or the water will get through. If you put huge leaves to cover your soil, the rain won't go through. You could call your local tree trimming services or your local power companies that hire the tree trimming services to cut near the power lines. A lot of times they have a truck full of wood chips from cutting trees. And a lot of times they'll give them to you for free because they do have to pay to get rid of them. This used to be a lot easier to get, but now everyone's kind of into gardening, especially organic gardening. So we're having trouble getting wood chips for free, so we're just using stuff around the property at this point. So the next important thing is don't forget to fertilize. There are tons of free ways to fertilize. You can buy fertilizer. In that case, just follow the directions on the package. Don't give your plants too much love if you're buying fertilizer because you could potentially kill them or stunt them. But if you're doing organic things like the wood chips and the leaves, that does help feed the soil and the microbes. So another thing is potash. If you have a fire, it has tons of potassium in it. Just sprinkle it on your plants. If you have access to pond water or lake water, it's got a lot of nitrogen and a lot of phosphorus in there. If you have any of these, they can help you fertilize. They can also help you make compost. So just build a big compost pile if you have the space for it. Feed them on the compost, and they will eat the bugs off of there, and they'll till it up for you and help make compost for you fast. Also, if you have cows as well, this rooster's gonna attack me. He's so nice. If you have cows as well, put the cow pies on the compost pile and they'll break that up as well, and it'll bring more bugs for them to eat. So it'll save you in chicken feed as well. Another thing is, if you would like, you can urinate on your plants. Urea is a very common ingredient in fertilizers, so if you have a semi-clean diet, why not use your own? Something that we do a lot is make like teas out of fruit usually. Because fruits and vegetables are water soluble, so a lot of their nutrients come out in water. So if we eat a banana, say, we'll put the banana peel in a bowl of water and soak it for like 24 hours. And then there's going to be a lot of potassium in that water. If we're boiling potatoes, we'll let that water cool off and put it on our plants. And there's going to be a lot of nutrients. Just whatever nutrient is in that fruit or vegetable, you could soak it and a lot of the nutrients will be in that water. Also, aerated compost teas or worm casting teas. I'll go show you our little setup, but we just aerate it with a fish pump, and allowing that oxygen to get in there, it just multiplies the microbes. So we don't have any going right now, but basically we just fill this bucket up I'm editing this video right now and I forgot, so we fill the bucket up with non-chlorinated water. If you're connected to city water, just fill that bucket up and let it sit out in the sun for a few days, and that burns off somehow. I'm not exactly sure how it works. And then we also put sugar in. We usually use brown sugar, a 1/4 cup, or you could use molasses as well. And that just feeds the microbes and keeps them going, or else they'll kind of just die out as they multiply. Okay, enjoy the rest of the video. And we just use an old sock. Some people use this is disgusting right now, we need to clean this. Some people use cheesecloth, but we just use an old sock and we hang it, we fill it with worm compost and we hang it on the bucket, and then we put these bubblers in there as well all the way at the bottom, and we just bubble it. This is our little fish pump. It's relatively inexpensive and it definitely helps a lot. And then we fill this most of the way up the sock. And here is our worm compost. And yeah, it's super, super good for your soil in your garden. Or of course you could use things like this. It doesn't really matter what type you use, honestly. I would recommend organic. A lot of these are a slow release fertilizer, so just keep that in mind, that it will take a little bit of time to feed your plants. We also will sometimes use Epsom salt, which is just magnesium and sulfur. Oh, and if you are going to urinate on your plants, I would recommend diluting it, about 5 to 10 parts water to 1 part urine, especially if they're smaller plants. You could pee right on a big tree, that's what's gonna happen in the jungle and nature. Tons of animals are gonna be peeing on the trees, but dilute it for smaller plants. It's the next day. A couple more things I wanted to talk about with fertilizer. If you know anyone with rabbits, that is the best animal manure. It's a cold manure, so it doesn't have to break down at all and it won't burn your plants. It has a very even nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium ratio. A lot of the manures are way higher on the nitrogen side. Used coffee grounds can be a pretty good fertilizer. It's pretty light, but it also adds to your soil structure. And it can be a good grit for the worms, which means it can help them break down their food because they don't have teeth, obviously. Eggshells as well. They don't break down too fast, but the smaller the particles, the faster they'll break down, so you can grind it in a coffee grinder or a blender or something and make a powder, and that'll break down pretty fast, and that'll add mostly calcium to the soil, and that can act as a grit for the worms as well. Let's talk about water and maintaining good soil moisture. Let's go check out our soil and see if it's good right now. Okay, so you want to be able to squeeze it and maybe get a few drops out of your hand, but not running down your arm. So let's check ours out. Yeah, so that's pretty good. You also want it to maintain its shape, but break apart easily. So I'd say we passed the test. Basically, more water doesn't equal more growth. You never want to have soggy soil. You just kind of want it moist. So if it rains a bunch, don't water the next day, or turn your sprinklers off. And if it's really, really dry, then maybe you want to water again. But your plants need oxygen as well as food and water, just like we do, so you definitely don't want them to be soggy. And I hope this isn't too much, but a lot of plants, when they're growing their fruit, as it's ripening, they do kind of want to dry out a little bit and it'll taste better, because if they get a good heavy watering, it'll kind of wash out the fruit and kind of dilute the flavor. So not a big deal, but if that's not too much to remember, let your soil dry out a little bit as that fruit is maturing. Okay, know what you're going to do with the produce that you harvest before you harvest it, because the time to harvest the fruit is not very long at all. Some things will go mushy and bad on the plant. Okra, for example, will get super woody and just like inedible. And I hope, especially if you're a beginner gardener, that you're growing things that you already eat. Like, we honestly don't eat a ton of normal salads with like lettuce. We really like Greek salads, so we grow tons of tomatoes and cucumbers, but we don't really grow too much lettuce because we don't really eat too much lettuce. Yes, homegrown lettuce tastes way better, but we're still not gonna eat it just because we don't already eat those things. So grow things that you have recipes for. If you're growing tons and tons, have plans of saving that stuff for later. If you're canning or whatever, learn how to do that right now. Don't wait until you have enough for a meal if you only have a couple plants of something. Like beans, for example, you're not gonna get more than a few beans off of one plant at a time. So if you wanna be eating meals of beans, you should have like a good solid row of green bean plants, like maybe 10 or something for a small family at least. So a lot of plants are gonna poop out on you, or there's gonna be bugs taking them over, or they'll have disease or whatever. A lot of things are gonna die. Don't get discouraged. What I would say is have extra plants ready, or have it in your budget to go out and buy extra plants to replace those. Also, a lot of things don't last very long. Like beans, like I was talking about, they're not gonna last very long at all. They're gonna grow, give you some beans, and then they're gonna be done. Beans and peas and stuff. A lot of things are like that where they just peak and then you'll want to replace the plant. So don't get discouraged. Don't like have your garden in and say, this is my garden. Like, I'm not gonna grow anything else. Like, be planting new seeds all the time. Be planting new plants to replace those plants in your garden, because some things are just not gonna make it, and you're not a bad gardener. That's just what happens. So, cover your soil, feed your soil, don't water too much, especially when fruit is ripening. Have a plan for what you're gonna do with your fruit, and keep planting. Keep planting seeds, keep planting plants. I hope you have a great gardening season. Please comment down below any tips for me, anything that you would have said. We could have another discussion down in the comments. And thank you so much for watching.